Cub loses balance on dam edge. What this human baby did was shocking. Let us know where you're watching from. If you love my content, consider supporting it with a super thanks. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe. It'll help us to remain in touch with amazing people like you. The morning sun painted golden streaks across the misty valley as Savannah Reed stepped onto the wooden porch of her family's riverside cabin. Her husband Logan had taken their 10-month-old daughter, Avery, for a walk along the forest trail that morning, giving Savannah a rare moment of solitude. She breathed in the crisp mountain air, savoring the peaceful sounds of nature. Birds chirping, leaves rustling, and the gentle rush of the river flowing over the old stone dam 50 yards from their cabin. The cabin had been a risky purchase. Logan's parents thought they were crazy to buy a place so remote, especially with a baby, but after years in the crowded city, both Savannah and Logan craved the simplicity of forest life. They'd spent their savings on this little slice of wilderness, a cozy 2-bedroom cabin nestled against towering pines and overlooking the river that cut through the heart of the valley. Savannah's peaceful moment was interrupted by distant voices growing louder. A group of hikers, 5 or 6 of them, emerged from the forest trail on the opposite bank. Their loud laughter echoed across the water as they crossed onto the wide, flat surface of the old stone dam that created the small lake behind their cabin. She frowned at their carelessness, watching as they tossed empty water bottles into their backpacks and snapped selfies against the backdrop of the cascading water. Her thoughts turned to Logan and Avery. They should be returning soon. Logan had promised to be back before Avery's morning nap. As if summoned by her thoughts, she spotted them emerging from the forest path. Logan carried Avery in a front-facing baby carrier, pointing out birds and squirrels as they walked. Savannah's heart swelled at the sight of her daughter's wide-eyed wonder, tiny fingers reaching out toward everything new. But something else caught Savannah's attention. Movement on the far side of the dam, just beyond where the hikers stood. A small, dark figure wobbled along the slippery edge. Savannah squinted, straining to see clearly through the morning mist. A bear cub. Its glossy black fur glistened in the sunlight as it tentatively made its way across the mossy stones of the dam's edge. The hikers hadn't noticed it yet. Their backs turned as they took more photos. Savannah's body tensed. Where was the mother bear? A cub this small, it couldn't be more than a few months old. Wouldn't be wandering alone unless something was wrong. She scanned the tree line but saw no sign of an adult bear. The cub continued its precarious journey along the dam's edge, each tiny paw carefully testing the slippery surface before committing its weight. Savannah reached for her phone to alert Logan, but it was too late. One of the hikers had spotted the cub and pointed, drawing everyone's attention. Their voices grew louder with excitement, some lifting their phones to capture photos of the wildlife encounter. The cub froze, startled by the sudden noise and movement. Its small body trembled, torn between retreating and continuing forward. Savannah watched in horror as the cub's back paw slipped on the wet moss, sending it scrambling for purchase on the smooth stone. For a brief moment, it seemed to regain balance, but then, with a terrified yelp that carried across the water, the cub tumbled over the edge. It didn't fall far. A jagged outcropping of rocks just below the dam's edge caught the cub, preventing it from plunging into the churning water below. But it was trapped now, clinging desperately to the rock, its frightened cries growing more frantic. The hikers crowded at the edge, pointing and taking videos. None made a move to help. "Logan!" Savannah shouted, waving frantically to get her husband's attention. He looked up from the path, immediately sensing the urgency in her voice. She pointed toward the dam and the stranded cub. Logan quickened his pace, carefully navigating the uneven ground with Avery still strapped to his chest. As they drew closer to the cabin, Savannah could see Avery's face clearly, her bright eyes fixed not on her mother, but on the commotion at the dam. The baby's expression was surprisingly intense, as if she understood the danger unfolding before them. The cub's cries grew weaker as its strength faded. Tiny claws scraped against the rock as it struggled to hold on. The hikers continued to watch, some laughing nervously, others simply recording the moment. None seemed willing to risk helping the trapped animal. "Why aren't they doing anything?" Savannah whispered as Logan reached the porch steps. Before he could answer, a deep, guttural growl echoed through the valley, stopping everyone in their tracks. From the forest edge emerged a massive black bear, her eyes locked on her stranded cub. The mother bear's massive form moved with surprising grace as she lumbered toward the dam. The hikers scattered in panic, abandoning their photo session and racing to the opposite side. Their frightened shouts bounced off the surrounding mountains as they fled, leaving behind backpacks and water bottles in their haste. "Get inside," Logan urged, his voice low and steady as he climbed the porch steps. "We need to stay out of sight." But Savannah couldn't move. Her eyes remained fixed on the desperate scene unfolding before them. The mother bear approached the edge of the dam, her powerful body tense with concern. She peered over the edge at her stranded cub, huffing and pacing in distress. "She can't reach it," Savannah whispered. "The ledge is too narrow for her." The cub's cries grew more pitiful, its tiny body trembling with exhaustion as it clung to the rock. The mother bear let out a mournful sound that pierced Savannah's heart, a sound so full of helplessness and fear that it transcended species. Logan gently touched Savannah's shoulder. "We should call forest services. There's nothing we can—" His words were cut short by a strange sound, not from the bears but from their daughter. Avery, usually a quiet baby who rarely fussed, was making an unusual noise. Not crying exactly, but a high-pitched, insistent sound that grew louder with each passing second. Her tiny body strained against the carrier, arms reaching out toward the dam. "What's wrong with her?" Savannah asked, reaching for her daughter. Logan carefully unbuckled the carrier and lifted Avery into his arms. "I don't know. She's never done this before." Avery's eyes remained fixed on the stranded cub, her little fingers opening and closing in its direction. The connection was unmistakable, as if she sensed the cub's distress and was responding to it. Her sounds grew more urgent, drawing the attention of the mother bear, who turned her massive head toward the cabin. The three adults, 2 human, 1 bear, locked eyes across the distance. A moment of silent communication passed between them, an understanding of shared concern for their young. The mother bear made no move toward the cabin. Her focus remained divided between her stranded cub and the strange human baby whose cries seemed to echo her own distress. "She knows we're not a threat," Logan whispered, his arms tightening protectively around Avery. "But we still need to be careful." The abandoned hikers' backpacks lay scattered across the dam's surface. Among them, a long walking stick had fallen near the edge. Savannah's eyes fixed on it, an idea forming in her mind. "I think I can help," she said quietly. Logan's eyes widened. "Savannah, no, it's too dangerous." "That cub is going to fall if someone doesn't do something," she insisted, "and its mother can't reach it." Before Logan could protest further, one of the hikers emerged from the forest edge. A tall man with a red cap, he approached cautiously, keeping his distance from both the bear and the dam. "Hey," he called out to Savannah and Logan. "We called forest services, but they said it'll be at least an hour before anyone can get here." The mother bear growled at the sound of his voice, taking a threatening step in his direction. The man immediately retreated, disappearing back into the trees. "An hour is too long," Savannah said, her eyes returning to the struggling cub. "It won't last that long." As if to confirm her words, the cub's grip slipped further, its back legs now dangling freely over the churning water below. Its frightened cries grew weaker, more desperate. Avery responded with increased agitation, her small body twisting in Logan's arms as she reached toward the dam. Her face reddened with effort, strange sounds tumbling from her mouth. Not words, but something more primal, a communication beyond language. "I think," Logan began, his voice filled with wonder, "I think she's trying to tell us to help the cub." Savannah nodded, the bond between baby and cub undeniable. "Keep her here. Keep her safe." Before Logan could stop her, Savannah stepped off the porch and began making her way toward the dam, moving slowly and deliberately. She kept her eyes on the mother bear, who watched her approach with suspicious eyes but made no move to attack. "Savannah!" Logan hissed, but she held up a hand to silence him, never taking her eyes off the bear. She stopped a few yards from the dam, close enough for the mother bear to see her clearly but far enough to retreat if necessary. Slowly, deliberately, she pointed toward the stranded cub, then to herself, then made a lifting motion with her hands. The mother bear huffed, pacing anxiously at the edge of the dam. Her dark eyes burned with intelligence and fear for her cub. "I'm going to help," Savannah said softly, speaking as much to the mother bear as to herself. "I promise I'm going to help." The mother bear's eyes never left Savannah as she inched closer to the dam. Every muscle in the massive animal's body tensed, ready to charge if she perceived any threat to her cub. Behind Savannah, on the porch, Logan held Avery tightly, his heart pounding so hard he was certain both bears could hear it. "Stay very still," he whispered to his daughter, though Avery had suddenly become quiet. Her previous agitation had transformed into an eerie calm, her wide eyes fixed on the unfolding drama. Savannah reached the edge of the dam and slowly knelt to retrieve the abandoned walking stick. The wood felt smooth and sturdy in her hands, strong enough, she hoped, to provide support for the struggling cub. The mother bear huffed loudly, taking 2 steps forward. "It's okay," Savannah said softly, her voice trembling despite her efforts to remain calm. "I'm going to help your baby." She wasn't sure if it was her tone or her words, but something about her voice seemed to reassure the mother bear, who stopped advancing though remained vigilantly watchful. Savannah crept forward across the dam's flat surface, careful to avoid the slippery patches of moss that had caused the cub's fall. The abandoned backpacks and water bottles scattered across the stone surface created an obstacle course she had to navigate. As she approached the edge where the cub had fallen, she could hear its pitiful whimpers growing weaker. Peering over, she saw the tiny black body clinging desperately to the rock ledge, its strength clearly fading. "Hold on, little one," she whispered. Savannah lay flat on her stomach and extended the walking stick over the edge, trying to position it near the cub as a potential bridge or support. The stick wasn't quite long enough to reach the ledge where the cub clung. She would need to move closer to the edge. Dangerously close. On the porch, Logan watched in silent terror as his wife edged nearer to the precipice. "Savannah, be careful," he called, unable to keep quiet any longer. The mother bear's head snapped toward him at the sound of his voice, but her attention quickly returned to Savannah and the cub. A strange sort of understanding seemed to exist between the woman and the bear, a fragile truce built on their shared concern for the cub's safety. Avery, who had been unnaturally quiet, suddenly began making soft cooing sounds, gentle, soothing noises, unlike her earlier distressed cries. The sound carried across the distance to where the mother bear stood. To Logan's astonishment, the massive animal's posture relaxed slightly, as if calmed by the baby's vocalizations. "She's communicating with them," he whispered in awe. "Somehow, she's communicating with them." Savannah had reached a precarious position, her upper body now hanging partly over the edge as she strained to extend the walking stick toward the stranded cub. The rush of water below made her dizzy, and she forced herself to focus only on the cub, not on the dangerous drop beneath it. "Come on," she encouraged, inching the stick closer. "Grab on." The cub eyed the stick warily, unsure of this strange new object entering its world of fear and exhaustion. Savannah wiggled the stick slightly, trying to make it seem less threatening. The cub's tiny paw reached out tentatively, touching the wood before quickly pulling back. Savannah held her breath, waiting. The second time, the cub's paw rested on the stick, testing its stability. "That's it," Savannah whispered. "Just climb on." On the porch, Avery's cooing grew louder, more deliberate, as if she were encouraging the cub in her own language. The mother bear turned toward the sound, her massive head tilting in curiosity. For a moment, the only sounds in the valley were the rushing water, Avery's gentle vocalizations, and the frightened whimpers of the cub. Slowly, painfully, the cub pulled itself onto the walking stick, its small body trembling with the effort. Savannah felt the added weight and gripped the stick tighter, her muscles straining as she began the delicate process of lifting the cub to safety. "I've got you," she murmured, carefully raising the stick inch by inch. The mother bear moved closer, her powerful presence both terrifying and somehow reassuring to Savannah. They were partners now, united in their goal of saving the cub. As the cub rose higher, its tiny body balanced precariously on the walking stick, Savannah realized she faced a new challenge: how to get the cub from the stick to solid ground without it falling again. She couldn't lift it high enough to reach the dam's surface while lying flat. "Logan," she called, her voice strained with effort. "I need help." Logan looked down at Avery in his arms, then at his wife on the dam with a wild bear just yards away. He knew he couldn't bring their baby any closer to danger, but Savannah needed him. At that moment, a figure emerged from the forest trail. The hiker with the red cap had returned, this time with one companion. They stood at the edge of the clearing, assessing the situation. "Hey!" Logan called out, waving to get their attention. "My wife needs help." The hikers exchanged a glance, clearly torn between helping and keeping a safe distance from the mother bear. The bear, sensing new presences, turned toward them with a warning growl. That's when Avery did something that would change everything. The baby let out a sound. Not a cry or a coo, but something between a growl and a hum, a sound so strange and unexpected that it caught everyone's attention, including the mother bear's. The sound that emerged from Avery's tiny body defied explanation. Not quite human, not quite animal, it resonated through the valley with surprising clarity and power. The mother bear's aggressive posture immediately softened, her massive head turning fully toward the baby. The hikers stood frozen, unsure what to make of this unexpected development. Logan stared down at his daughter in disbelief. Avery's eyes were locked with the mother bear's, a connection so intense it sent shivers down his spine. The baby continued her strange vocalizations, varying the pitch and rhythm as if communicating something specific. On the dam, Savannah remained stretched out, the walking stick supporting the cub's weight growing heavier in her trembling hands. She couldn't maintain this position much longer. "Please," she called to the hikers, "I need help now." The hiker in the red cap took a hesitant step forward, then stopped. his eyes darting between the bear and the stranded cub. His companion, a shorter man with silver-streaked hair, placed a hand on his shoulder. "Michael," the silver-haired man said, "we can't just watch this happen." Michael nodded, taking a deep breath. "Keep talking to it," he told Logan, gesturing toward Avery and her strange communication with the bear. "Whatever your baby is doing, it's working." As the two men cautiously approached the dam, the mother bear huffed and took a step toward them. But Avery's sounds grew louder, more insistent. The bear paused, looking back at the baby. The moment held a strange magic. A wild animal seemingly responding to an infant's call. "That's impossible," the silver-haired man whispered. "Bears don't. They shouldn't." "Focus, Connor," Michael said, nudging his friend. "We need to help her." They moved onto the dam's surface, giving the mother bear a wide berth as they approached Savannah from the opposite side. The bear watched their every move but remained in place, her attention divided between the approaching men and Avery's continuing sounds. Savannah's arms burned with the strain of holding the walking stick. The cub had managed to pull its entire body onto the makeshift bridge, but remained a precarious foot below the dam's edge. "I can't lift it any higher," she gasped as the men reached her. Michael knelt beside her while Connor kept a watchful eye on the mother bear. "I'll take it from here," Michael said, slowly taking hold of the walking stick. "When I've got a good grip, you slide back, away from the edge." The transfer was delicate. As Michael's hands closed around the walking stick, Savannah felt the weight shift. The cub whimpered, frightened by the change, and the mother bear growled in response. "Steady," Connor warned, his voice tight with tension. On the porch, Avery's strange sounds grew more rhythmic, almost musical. Logan watched in amazement as his daughter seemed to soothe the massive predator with nothing but her voice. The mother bear's eyes never left Avery, even as Michael began to slowly raise the walking stick with the cub clinging to it. "Easy does it," Michael murmured, his strong arms lifting the cub the final distance to the dam's surface. The tiny creature clung to the stick, afraid to let go of its only security. Connor knelt beside them, removing his jacket. "We can use this to carry it," he suggested. Michael nodded. "Good idea. Ready on 3. 1, 2. On 3, they swiftly transferred the trembling cub from the stick to the jacket, creating a makeshift sling. The cub squirmed, but was too exhausted to struggle much. Its dark eyes blinked rapidly, adjusting to the sunlight and the presence of humans. The mother bear let out a low, rumbling sound, taking several steps toward them. Savannah scrambled backward, away from the men and the cub, giving the bear a clear path to her baby. "Set it down," she instructed, her voice barely above a whisper, gently, and then back away. Michael and Connor carefully lowered the jacket with the cub to the stone surface of the dam, then began a slow retreat. The cub remained motionless for several seconds, as if unsure what to do with its newfound freedom. Then, with a pitiful cry, it tried to stand but collapsed, too weak from its ordeal. The mother bear approached cautiously, her massive paws making surprisingly little noise on the stone surface. When she reached her cub, she gently nudged it with her nose, checking it for injuries. The cub responded with a weak cry, attempting once more to stand. From the porch, Avery's strange sounds had quieted. The baby watched intently as the mother bear bent low, gently taking the scruff of the cub's neck between her teeth. With infinite care, she lifted her baby, carrying it as she turned to leave the dam. But instead of heading directly back to the forest, the mother bear paused. Slowly, deliberately, she turned toward the cabin where Logan stood with Avery. For a long, breathless moment, bear and baby regarded each other across the distance. The mother bear dipped her massive head, the closest thing to a bow her body could manage while carrying her cub. Logan felt tears sting his eyes at the unmistakable gesture. Beside him, Avery reached out a tiny hand toward the bears, making a soft cooing sound. Normal, this time, human. As the mother bear carried her cub back toward the safety of the forest, Savannah made her way to the edge of the dam, joining Michael and Connor in stunned silence. "I've been hiking these mountains for 20 years, Connor said finally, his voice hushed with awe. "I've never seen anything like that." "Your daughter," Michael added, turning to look at Logan and Avery on the porch. "There's something special about her." Savannah nodded, tears streaming down her face as she watched the bears disappear into the trees. "Yes," she whispered. "There certainly is." Section 5. The Aftermath. The valley felt unnaturally quiet after the bears disappeared into the forest. Savannah stood on the dam with Michael and Connor, all three of them struggling to process what they had just witnessed. The rushing water below seemed louder now, filling the silence left by the departing bears. "We should report this," Connor said finally, running a hand through his silver-streaked hair. "The Forest Service should know there's a mother and cub in the area." Michael nodded, but his eyes remained fixed on the point where the bears had vanished into the trees. "They should know," he agreed, "but not about everything." They all understood what he meant. How could they explain what had happened between Avery and the mother bear? Who would believe that a 10-month-old baby had somehow communicated with a wild animal? Savannah took a deep breath, suddenly aware of how badly her arms and shoulders ached from the rescue effort. "Thank you both," she said sincerely. "I couldn't have done it without your help." "We almost didn't help at all," Michael admitted, shame evident in his voice. "We were too scared." "So was I," Savannah confessed. "I'm still not sure what made me think I could do anything." Connor glanced toward the cabin where Logan still stood with Avery. "I think your little one had something to do with it." The three of them made their way off the dam, collecting the abandoned backpacks and water bottles left by the other hikers. As they approached the cabin, Logan descended the porch steps to meet them, Avery still cradled securely in his arms. "Is everyone okay?" he asked, his eyes scanning Savannah for any signs of injury. She nodded, reaching out to touch Avery's plump cheek. The baby gurgled happily, all traces of her strange behavior gone. She looked like any ordinary child now, bright-eyed, curious, reaching for her mother's face with pudgy fingers. "Your wife is incredibly brave," Connor told Logan. "Not just us," Savannah corrected gently. "Avery. They came to thank Avery." Logan nodded, understanding. They both looked down at their daughter, who was still watching the spot where the bears had disappeared, a serene expression on her face that seemed far too wise for her 10 months of life. "Something incredible happened here," Logan whispered. "Something we may never fully understand." Section 7. The Unexpected Visitor. 3 days after the bears' return visit, a black SUV with government plates wound its way up the narrow road leading to the cabin. Savannah spotted it from the kitchen window as she prepared lunch, the unfamiliar vehicle immediately putting her on alert. They rarely had visitors this far into the woods, and never official-looking ones. "Logan," she called, wiping her hands on a dish towel. "Someone's coming." Logan appeared from Avery's room, where he'd been putting her down for a nap. "Government plates," he observed, joining Savannah at the window. "Forest Service, maybe?" But when the vehicle parked and its driver stepped out, it was clear this wasn't a typical forest ranger. The man was tall and lean, dressed in a crisp gray suit that seemed entirely out of place among the towering pines. He surveyed the cabin with calculating eyes before retrieving a leather briefcase from the passenger seat. "Should we be worried?" Savannah whispered, an inexplicable unease settling over her. Logan squeezed her shoulder reassuringly. "Probably just some bureaucratic thing about the property. I'll handle it." He opened the front door as the stranger approached the porch, his polished shoes incongruous against the rustic wooden steps. Up close, the man appeared to be in his early 50s, with silver temples and sharp, observant eyes that missed nothing. "Logan Reed?" he inquired, his voice smooth and practiced. Logan nodded cautiously. "That's me." The man extended his hand. "Ethan Marshall, Department of Wildlife Behavioral Studies. May I come in? I'd like to discuss your recent bear encounter." Logan hesitated before accepting the handshake. "How did you hear about that?" A thin smile crossed Ethan's face. "News travels in small communities, Mr. Reed, especially when it involves such an unusual interaction." Logan glanced back at Savannah, who nodded slightly. "All right," he said, stepping aside. "Come in." The interior of the cabin was warm and inviting, with large windows framing views of the forest and river. Ethan's eyes swept over everything, lingering momentarily on the family photos displayed on the stone fireplace mantel before settling on Savannah. "Mrs. Reed, I presume," he said, offering his hand. "A pleasure to meet you. I understand you were the one who rescued the cub?" Savannah shook his hand briefly. "With help from 2 hikers, yes." "Would you like some coffee, Mr. Marshall?" "Please," he replied, setting his briefcase on the coffee table and taking a seat on the couch. "And call me Ethan." As Savannah busied herself in the kitchen, Logan sat across from their visitor, studying him with undisguised skepticism. "Department of Wildlife Behavioral Studies?" he repeated. "I've never heard of it." Ethan smiled again, that same controlled expression that never quite reached his eyes. "We're a specialized division, focusing on unusual animal behaviors and human-wildlife interactions. Your encounter with the mother bear and cub has attracted our attention for several reasons." "Which reasons would those be?" Logan asked, his tone carefully neutral. Ethan leaned forward slightly. "The fact that a mother bear allowed a human to approach her stranded cub without attacking. The fact that the same bear returned days later, apparently to thank you. That's highly unusual behavior, Mr. Reed." Savannah returned with the coffee, setting a mug in front of Ethan before taking a seat beside Logan. The forest ranger who came by, Jessica Brooks, didn't seem to find it that unusual, she noted. "She just advised us to keep our distance if the bears returned." Ranger Brooks filed a standard report, Ethan acknowledged, taking a sip of his coffee. "But certain details caught my department's attention. For instance, the hikers who assisted you mentioned something rather extraordinary about your child." Logan and Savannah exchanged a quick glance, a silent communication passing between them. They had shared the full story with no one, not even the hikers. Whatever Michael and Connor had reported, it couldn't have included Avery's strange communication with the bear. They had kept that detail to themselves. "Our daughter was present during the rescue, yes," Logan said carefully. "She's just a baby, though, 10 months old." Ethan's eyes narrowed slightly. "The hikers described some unusual vocalizations from your daughter, sounds that seemed to calm the mother bear?" A tense silence filled the room. Savannah's hand found Logan's, gripping it tightly. "Mr. Marshall," Logan began, "I'm not sure what exactly you're looking for here, but—" A soft cry from the back bedroom interrupted him. Avery was awake from her nap. Savannah immediately rose to get her, but Ethan held up a hand. "If you don't mind," he said, his tone making it clear this wasn't really a request. "I'd like to meet your daughter." Savannah hesitated, looking to Logan for guidance. Something about this situation felt wrong, but they couldn't quite place why. After a moment, Logan nodded, and Savannah went to retrieve Avery. When she returned, Avery was rubbing her eyes sleepily, her small body warm and relaxed from her nap. She blinked curiously at the stranger in their living room, studying him with the intense focus that babies sometimes possess. Ethan stood as they entered, his expression changing subtly as he looked at Avery. For the first time since his arrival, genuine emotion seemed to cross his face, a mixture of fascination and something harder to identify. He stepped closer, extending a finger toward Avery as one might to a cat one wished to befriend. "Hello, little one," he said softly. "Aren't you something special?" Avery regarded his finger with suspicion, turning her face into Savannah's shoulder instead of engaging. This small rejection seemed to disappoint Ethan, though he quickly masked it with a professional smile. "She's shy with strangers," Savannah explained, holding Avery closer. "Completely understandable," Ethan replied, returning to his seat. He opened his briefcase, removing a thin file folder. "Mr. and Mrs. Reed, I'm going to be direct with you. Our department has been tracking unusual animal-human interaction patterns for years, with a particular focus on cases involving children." He laid several photographs on the coffee table, images of different children with various animals. In one, a small boy stood surrounded by deer that appeared abnormally calm in his presence. In another, a young girl sat beside a wild fox, her hand resting on its back. "These children," Ethan continued, "all demonstrated an unusual ability to communicate with wild animals on a level that defies conventional understanding. We believe your daughter may share this rare gift." Logan leaned forward to examine the photos. "What exactly are you suggesting, Mr. Marshall? And more importantly, what do you want from us?" Ethan straightened, his demeanor becoming more businesslike. "We'd like to conduct some simple, non-invasive observations of your daughter in natural settings with wildlife, entirely under your supervision, of course. The data we collect could help us understand this phenomenon better and potentially benefit both wildlife conservation and human-animal relations." "Absolutely not," Savannah said immediately, rising from her seat with Avery still in her arms. "Our daughter is not a research subject." Ethan seemed unfazed by her reaction. "Mrs. Reed, I understand your protective instinct, but what your daughter appears to possess is incredibly rare and valuable. The ability to communicate across species barriers." "She's a baby," Logan interrupted firmly, "not a science experiment." A sound from outside drew their attention, a car door closing. Through the window, they saw a second black SUV had arrived. A woman in a suit similar to Ethan's was approaching the cabin, carrying what looked like specialized recording equipment. "You brought someone else?" Logan demanded, standing now as well. "Without asking us?" Ethan closed his file folder calmly. "Dr. Adams is our behavioral specialist. She's equipped to capture any unusual vocalizations your daughter might produce." "This meeting is over," Logan stated flatly. "Please leave our home, Mr. Marshall." But Ethan made no move to go. Instead, he reached into his jacket pocket and removed what appeared to be an official government identification card. "I was hoping for your voluntary cooperation, but I should inform you that our department has certain authority in cases of significant scientific interest." Savannah felt a chill run through her body. She held Avery tighter, the baby seeming to sense her mother's distress and beginning to fuss. "You can't force us to participate in your research," she said, fighting to keep her voice steady. Not force, no, Ethan agreed. But we can make things rather difficult if you refuse to cooperate. For instance, questions might arise about the wisdom of raising a child in such an isolated location, so near to dangerous wildlife. The threat hung in the air, subtle but unmistakable. Before either Logan or Savannah could respond, a sharp knock came at the door, followed immediately by the entrance of the woman they had seen outside. "Everything ready, Ethan?" she asked, before noticing the tense tableau in the living room. "Oh, I see we have a situation." "Dr. Adams," Ethan said smoothly. "The Reeds were just expressing some reservations about our study." Dr. Adams, a severe-looking woman with a tight bun and rectangular glasses, assessed Savannah and Avery with clinical interest. "The child appears healthy. Has she demonstrated the vocalization pattern again since the initial incident?" "That's none of your business," Logan snapped, moving to stand protectively beside Savannah and Avery. Dr. Adams seemed unperturbed by his hostility. She set her equipment case on the coffee table and began unpacking what looked like sophisticated recording devices and small cameras. "What do you think you're doing?" Savannah demanded. "Setting up for preliminary observations," Dr. Adams replied matter-of-factly. "We'll need baseline readings of the child's normal vocalizations before attempting to recreate the conditions that triggered the cross-species communication." "Recreate the—" Logan began incredulously. "You want to put our daughter near a wild bear again? Are you insane?" Ethan raised a placating hand. "We have safe methods for controlled wildlife interaction. No one is suggesting placing your child in danger." As the confrontation escalated, no one noticed that Avery had gone very still in Savannah's arms. The baby's eyes were fixed on the large window overlooking the porch and the forest beyond. Her small body tensed, and then, without warning, she let out a sound. Not the strange vocalization from the bear encounter, but a single, sharp cry that cut through the adult's argument like a knife. All heads turned toward the window. There, at the edge of the clearing, stood the mother bear. This time, she was not alone. Behind her massive form, at least 3 additional bears had emerged from the forest. A larger male and 2 adolescent bears, too big to be cubs but not yet fully grown. "Fascinating," Dr. Adams whispered, reaching for her recording equipment. "They've formed a social group around the mother and cub. That's extremely unusual behavior for solitary animals like black bears." Ethan moved swiftly to the window, his professional demeanor slipping to reveal genuine excitement. "This is exactly the type of anomalous behavior we've been studying. The child must be influencing their social structure somehow." But Logan wasn't listening to their scientific observations. His focus was entirely on the bears, whose posture seemed different this time. Not curious or grateful, but alert and protective. The massive male bear rose onto his hind legs, towering over the surrounding vegetation, his dark eyes fixed directly on the cabin. "They're not here to say thank you," Logan said quietly. "They're here because she called them." Savannah looked down at Avery, whose expression had changed to something almost knowing, far too mature for her infant face. "She sensed the threat," Savannah whispered, realization dawning. "She called for help." Ethan and Dr. Adams were too engrossed in the unprecedented bear behavior to hear the parents' exchange. They were hurriedly setting up cameras and recording equipment near the windows. "This is an extraordinary opportunity," Ethan was saying. "A spontaneous demonstration of cross-species allegiance triggered by the child's distress." "Dr. Adams, are you getting this?" The woman nodded, adjusting her equipment. "All readings active. If the child vocalizes again, we'll capture everything." Outside, the bears had begun to spread out, forming a loose semicircle facing the cabin. The mother bear remained in the center, her cub now visible beside her, watching with the same intensity as its mother. "They're preparing to approach," Dr. Adams observed clinically. "Fascinating defensive formation, almost wolf-like in its coordination." Logan had heard enough. He turned to Savannah, his expression resolute. "Take Avery to the back bedroom. Lock the door and don't come out until I call for you." Savannah nodded, understanding immediately. As she carried Avery toward the hallway, Ethan finally tore his attention away from the bears. "Where are you taking her?" he demanded. "We need to observe the child's interaction with the wildlife." Logan positioned himself between Ethan and the hallway. "You've overstayed your welcome, Mr. Marshall. It's time for you and Dr. Adams to leave." "This is a scientific opportunity of unprecedented," Dr. Adams began, but Logan cut her off. "Those bears aren't here for your research. They're here because they sensed a threat to Avery, to my daughter, and right now you are that threat." Ethan's expression hardened. "Mr. Reed, I don't think you understand the importance of what's happening here. Your daughter appears to possess a neurological anomaly that allows interspecies communication. The scientific implications are enormous." "I understand perfectly," Logan replied, his voice dangerously calm. "You see my daughter as a research subject, a curiosity. But those bears out there, they see her as part of their family, something to protect. Now, which perspective do you think is more dangerous for you right now?" As if to emphasize his point, a deep, rumbling growl rolled across the clearing, the male bear's warning. It was followed by a chorus of similar sounds from the other bears, a harmonized threat that made the cabin's windows vibrate slightly. Dr. Adams looked up from her equipment, alarm finally registering on her face. "The bear's aggressive behavior is escalating. Perhaps we should leave," Logan finished for her. "Now." Ethan hesitated, clearly torn between scientific opportunity and self-preservation. The decision was made for him when the male bear dropped to all fours and took several deliberate steps toward the cabin, powerful muscles rippling beneath his thick fur. "We can continue this discussion at a later date," Ethan conceded, hastily gathering his files. "Dr. Adams, pack up your equipment." The woman complied reluctantly, casting longing glances at the bears outside. "Such a waste of data," she muttered as she closed her case. Logan escorted them to the door, standing firm as Ethan made one final appeal. "Mr. Reed, at least consider what I've said. Your daughter's ability could revolutionize our understanding of animal cognition and communication. We could arrange compensation, educational opportunities for her future." "Goodbye, Mr. Marshall," Logan said firmly, holding the door open. The two researchers made their way quickly to their vehicles, casting nervous glances at the bears who watched their every move with unwavering attention. As soon as they were inside their SUVs, Logan closed and locked the cabin door, then hurried to the back bedroom where Savannah and Avery were waiting. "They're leaving," he assured them, sitting on the edge of the bed where Savannah cradled Avery. "Are you both okay?" Savannah nodded, though her face was pale with tension. "What do we do now, Logan?" "If they come back—" "We'll deal with that if it happens," he said, trying to sound more confident than he felt. "For now, let's just be grateful for our unusual protectors." They returned to the living room together, approaching the windows cautiously. Outside, the bears remained in their defensive formation, watching as the two black SUVs reversed and began the journey back down the mountain road. Only when the vehicles had disappeared from view did the bear's posture relax. The male dropped from his aggressive stance, shaking his massive head as if clearing it. The adolescent bears began to mill about more naturally, sniffing at the ground and nearby vegetation. Only the mother bear and her cub remained focused on the cabin. As Logan, Savannah, and Avery watched from the window, the mother bear seemed to make eye contact with them. Then, with deliberate movements, she herded her cub back toward the forest edge. At the tree line, she paused, looking back one final time before disappearing into the shadows beneath the pines, her family following behind her. "She's been watching over us," Savannah said softly. "All this time." Logan nodded, his arm tightening around her shoulders. "The question is, how long has Avery been talking to her?" In his wife's arms, Avery gurgled happily, reaching toward the now empty clearing as if waving goodbye to friends only she truly understood. Section 8. The Decision. That night, after Avery had been put to bed, Logan and Savannah sat on the porch, watching as twilight deepened over the valley. The events of the day had left them shaken, questioning everything they thought they knew about their daughter and their life in this remote cabin. "They'll come back," Savannah said quietly, breaking the long silence between them. "Marshall and his department, they won't just give up." Logan nodded grimly. "I know. The question is, what do we do about it?" The chirping of crickets filled the night air as they both considered their limited options. The isolation that had once seemed so peaceful now felt dangerous. They were vulnerable here, far from neighbors who might notice suspicious activity or authorities they could call for help. "We could go to the media," Savannah suggested. "Make Avery's story public before they can control the narrative." Logan shook his head. "And then what? Turn our daughter into a national curiosity? Have every scientist and wildlife expert clamoring to study her? News vans parked outside our home? That's no life for a child." He was right, and Savannah knew it. Going public would only intensify the attention, not protect them from it. "What about moving?" she asked. "We could sell the cabin, go somewhere they couldn't find us easily." "Where would we go that she'd be safe?" Logan countered. "A city apartment, the suburbs, places where she'd never connect with nature the way she does here. Besides, if this department has government backing, they have resources. They could track us down eventually." Savannah leaned back in her chair, frustration evident in every line of her body. "So what, then? We just wait for them to return with more people, maybe a court order next time?" Logan didn't answer immediately. His eyes were fixed on the dark line of the forest, where somewhere their unlikely guardians roamed. "There's something we're missing," he said finally. "Something about Avery's connection with those bears." "What do you mean?" "Think about it," Logan urged. "The mother bear and her cub didn't just happen to wander by our cabin again today. They came because Avery called them somehow. And they brought reinforcements. That's not normal bear behavior by any stretch of the imagination." Savannah considered this. "So, Avery's connection with them is stronger than we realized. How does that help us?" Logan leaned forward, his expression intense in the fading light. "What if that connection is our protection? What if, instead of running from this ability she has, we embrace it, learn to understand it better on our terms?" The idea hung between them, radical, yet somehow right. Savannah found herself nodding slowly. "But how would we even begin to do that?" "We start by accepting what we've seen with our own eyes," Logan said. "Our daughter can communicate with animals in a way that science can't explain. Instead of fearing that or hiding from it, we help her develop it safely." As they discussed possibilities, a soft sound from inside the cabin caught their attention. Avery's cry through the baby monitor. Savannah rose immediately to check on her, returning moments later with their daughter in her arms. Despite the late hour, Avery was wide awake, her bright eyes alert. Someone didn't want to miss the conversation, Savannah said with a small smile, settling back into her chair with Avery on her lap. The baby's gaze moved between her parents, then fixed on the forest edge with an intensity that still surprised them. She made a soft cooing sound, her small body leaning forward, as if drawn to something in the darkness beyond. "What is it, sweetheart?" Logan asked, following her gaze. "Do you see something out there?" As if in response to his question, a shadow detached itself from the tree line, the unmistakable silhouette of the mother bear. She was alone this time, moving with cautious grace toward the edge of the clearing. There she stopped, sitting back on her haunches in a pose that seemed almost human in its deliberateness. Avery squirmed in Savannah's arms, making excited noises and reaching toward the bear. Without thinking, Savannah stood up, carrying Avery to the top of the porch steps. "Savannah," Logan cautioned, immediately at her side. "What are you doing?" "I'm not sure," she admitted, her eyes fixed on the bear. "But I think she's trying to tell us something." The mother bear remained seated at the clearing's edge, watching them with intelligent eyes that reflected the cabin's lights. After a moment, she rose and took several steps to the right, then looked back expectantly, as if checking whether they were paying attention. "She wants us to follow her," Logan realized, his voice hushed with amazement. "That's impossible," Savannah whispered, though she knew they had long since left the realm of the possible behind. The bear repeated the movement, walking a few paces, then looking back at them. The message was unmistakable. "We can't," Logan said firmly. "Following a wild bear into the forest at night? With our baby? That's insane." But Avery was growing increasingly agitated in Savannah's arms, making frustrated sounds and straining toward the bear with such determination that Savannah struggled to hold her. "Logan," Savannah said slowly, "I think we need to trust her." "Trust Avery." He stared at her in disbelief. "You can't be serious." "These bears have shown us nothing but protection and gratitude," Savannah argued. "They came when Avery called for help. They chased away the people who threatened her. What if they know something we don't? What if they're trying to help us now?" Logan ran a hand through his hair, his expression torn between rational fear and the undeniable truth of what they had witnessed. "If we do this," he said finally, "we stay together, and at the first sign of danger we turn back. Agreed?" Savannah nodded, her heart pounding with a mixture of fear and exhilaration. Logan went inside briefly, returning with a powerful flashlight and a backpack hastily stuffed with emergency supplies. Water, a first aid kit, a blanket for Avery. "I can't believe we're doing this," he muttered as they descended the porch steps. "Following a bear at night, with our baby." "If you have a better solution to our Marshall problem, I'm all ears," Savannah replied, adjusting Avery in her arms. The baby had calmed now that they were moving toward the bear, her eyes fixed on their unlikely guide with complete trust. The mother bear watched their approach with patient eyes. When they reached the edge of the clearing, she turned and began walking into the forest, her pace deliberately slow, as if conscious of their human limitations. Logan switched on the flashlight, illuminating a narrow path among the towering pines. The forest was alive with night sounds, the hooting of owls, the rustle of small creatures in the underbrush, the whispering of wind through the trees. Yet somehow, these familiar sounds felt different now, more deliberate, as if the forest itself was aware of their presence. The bear led them deeper into the woods, occasionally pausing to ensure they were still following. Avery remained unusually quiet, her small face solemn in the flashlight's glow, as they traversed the unfamiliar terrain. How far is she taking us? Savannah wondered aloud after they had been walking for nearly 20 minutes. I don't know, Logan replied, checking his phone. No reception out here, but I've been marking our trail. We can find our way back. Just as Savannah was beginning to wonder if they had made a terrible mistake, the trees thinned, revealing a small clearing bathed in moonlight. At its center stood an enormous oak tree, its massive trunk splitting into two main branches about 6 feet from the ground, creating a natural cradle large enough for a person to sit in. The mother bear stopped at the edge of this clearing, turning to face them. Beside the great oak, other shapes moved in the moonlight. The male bear and the adolescents they had seen earlier, plus several other bears of varying sizes. It was as if the entire local bear population had gathered for some purpose. "Logan," Savannah whispered, instinctively drawing closer to him. "What is this?" Before he could answer, Avery let out a sound. Not the strange vocalization from before, but a happy gurgle of recognition. She squirmed in Savannah's arms, pointing excitedly toward the oak tree. At first, they saw nothing unusual about the ancient tree. Then, as their eyes adjusted to the moonlight, they noticed markings on its trunk. Claw marks, hundreds of them, etched into patterns that seemed too deliberate to be random. Some were clearly aged, the bark grown around them, while others appeared fresh. It's some kind of gathering place, Logan realized, his voice hushed with awe. Look at those marks. Generations of bears have been coming here. As they watched, the mother bear approached the oak, rising onto her hind legs to place her paws against the trunk. With careful movements, she added her own marks to the complex pattern, her powerful claws scoring the bark with precision. She's communicating, Savannah breathed. They all are. They've been doing it for who knows how long. The realization was staggering, that these creatures they had always thought of as solitary and simple had maintained a complex communication system, a shared history recorded in the living wood of this ancient tree. Avery's excitement grew as she watched the mother bear's actions. She babbled and pointed, her small body practically vibrating with energy. When the bear finished her markings and dropped back to all fours, she turned to look directly at the humans, her gaze lingering on Avery. Without warning, Avery began making sounds. Not quite her strange bear language from before, but not her usual baby noises either. Something in between, a bridge between worlds that neither Savannah nor Logan could fully comprehend. The gathered bears grew still, their attention fixed entirely on the human child. The mother bear approached slowly, stopping a respectful distance from where Savannah stood with Avery in her arms. "What do we do?" Savannah whispered to Logan, her arms tightening protectively around their daughter. Logan studied the scene before them, the circle of attentive bears, the ancient oak with its record of generations, the strange, peaceful energy of this hidden clearing. "I think," he said slowly, "we need to let Avery answer them." "What does that mean?" Savannah asked, uncertain. "I'm not sure," Logan admitted, "but she seems to understand something we don't. Maybe we need to trust that." After a moment's hesitation, Savannah knelt, setting Avery on her feet while maintaining a supportive hold on her small body. The baby had only recently learned to stand with assistance and couldn't walk independently yet. But here, in this moonlit clearing surrounded by creatures that should have terrified her, Avery showed no fear at all. The mother bear lowered herself to the ground, bringing her massive head closer to Avery's level. The two regarded each other across a short distance, predator and prey by nature's design, yet connected by something that transcended those categories. Then, to Savannah and Logan's astonishment, Avery took a wobbly step forward, then another, her hands extended for balance but moving independently for the first time in her life. Her parents remained frozen in shock and wonder as their daughter took her first unsupported steps toward the waiting bear. "Logan," Savannah gasped, her hand finding his in the darkness. "She's walking." They watched, hearts in their throats, as Overy made her unsteady way across the small gap separating her from the mother bear. When she reached the massive creature, she placed her tiny hands against the bear's nose with complete confidence, as if greeting an old friend. The mother bear remained perfectly still, allowing this touch with a gentleness that defied everything Savannah and Logan had ever been taught about wild predators. Around them, the other bears made soft, huffing sounds, almost like approving murmurs. What happened next would remain etched in Logan and Savannah's memories forever. Avery, her small hands still resting on the bear's muzzle, began to make the strange sounds again, the ones that had first emerged during the cub's rescue. But this time, the sounds were clearer, more deliberate, as if she were speaking sentences in a language only she and the bears understood. The mother bear responded with gentle rumbles and huffs, her dark eyes never leaving Avery's face. It was, without question, a conversation. Two species communicating across a divide that science claimed was unbridgeable. As this extraordinary exchange continued, Logan noticed something happening to the other bears. They had begun to form a loose circle around the clearing, positioning themselves facing outward, like sentinels. Understanding dawned suddenly, clear and certain. "They're protecting us," he whispered to Savannah, "creating a perimeter." "From what?" she asked, scanning the dark forest beyond the clearing. The answer came moments later as distant lights appeared among the trees, flashlights, moving steadily closer. Human voices carried on the night air, too indistinct to make out words, but unmistakably heading in their direction. "Marshall," Logan growled. "They must have followed us, or put a tracker on our phones, or the cabin somehow." The approaching lights were growing brighter, the voices louder. The bears in the defensive circle grew tense, some rising to their hind legs in warning postures. Avery, seemingly aware of the approaching threat, finished whatever communication she had been engaged in with the mother bear, and turned back toward her parents. Her face in the moonlight was serene, confident in a way that seemed impossible for a child her age. "We need to get her out of here," Logan said urgently, moving to retrieve their daughter, "before this turns into a confrontation." But Savannah placed a restraining hand on his arm. "Look," she said softly, pointing toward the oak tree. The mother bear had moved to the massive trunk, indicating with clear gestures a hollow at its base partially concealed by roots and undergrowth. She looked back at the humans, then at the hollow, then at the approaching lights. "It's a hiding place," Savannah realized. "She's showing us where to hide." Logan hesitated, torn between flight and trust. The lights were growing closer by the second, voices now distinguishable. Ethan Marshall ordering his team to spread out, to secure the perimeter, to prepare tranquilizer guns if the bears became aggressive. "We can't outrun them," Savannah pointed out. "Not in the dark, not carrying Avery." Logan made his decision. The hollow, quickly. He took Avery from Savannah, and together they hurried to the ancient oak. The hollow at its base was larger than it appeared, a cavern worn into the earth beneath the massive roots. It smelled of earth and wood, and though cramped, it was large enough for the three of them to squeeze into. As they settled into the hiding place, the mother bear moved to stand guard nearby, her massive body partially concealing the hollow's entrance. The other bears maintained their protective circle, their bodies mere shadows in the moonlight. Through gaps in the roots, Savannah and Logan could see the flashlights breaking through the tree line into the clearing. Voices became clearer. Ethan Marshall directing his team, Dr. Adams analyzing readings on some handheld device, several other figures in dark clothing moving with military precision. Thermal signatures indicate the bears have been here recently, Dr. Adams was saying. Multiple individuals, unusual grouping behavior. And the reeds? Marshall demanded. Their trail leads here, but I'm not getting clear human thermal signatures now, she replied, frustration evident in her voice. The bear activity is overwhelming the sensors. Marshall surveyed the clearing, his flashlight beam stopping on the ancient oak. That tree, he said, directing his team's attention to it. Look at those markings. Have you ever seen anything like that? Dr. Adams approached the oak, studying the claw patterns with obvious fascination. It's some kind of communication system, she breathed, possibly maintained over generations. This changes everything we thought we knew about Ursine social structures. She was so engrossed in the tree that she failed to notice the mother bear standing perfectly still just yards away, concealed by shadows and underbrush. Inside the hollow, Logan held Savannah and Avery close, scarcely daring to breathe as the researchers examined the oak bear feet from their hiding place. "You see what the child has led us to?" Marshall said, excitement bleeding through his professional demeanor. "This is unprecedented, a communication hub for supposedly solitary apex predators." "But where are the reeds?" one of the team members asked, scanning the clearing with a high-powered flashlight. "Spread out," Marshall ordered. "Check the perimeter. They couldn't have gotten far." Inside the hollow, Logan held Avery protectively as the search team moved around the clearing. The baby remained miraculously quiet, as if understanding the need for silence. Savannah's hand found Logan's in the darkness, squeezing tightly as footsteps approached their hiding place. Dr. Adams was just feet away now, her instruments picking up readings from the ancient oak. "This tree is remarkable," she was saying. "The cellular activity suggests it's responding to something. Almost like it's aware." A sudden, low growl cut through the clearing, not from the mother bear guarding their hiding place, but from the massive male at the far edge of the clearing. The sound was joined by others, a chorus of warning rumbles that seemed to come from all directions as the bears revealed their presence. "Bears!" someone shouted. "Multiple bears surrounding us." The clearing erupted into chaos as Marshall's team scrambled to regroup, flashlight beams darting wildly across the darkness. "Tranquilizers," Marshall ordered. "No lethal force." These animals are valuable research subjects. But before anyone could act, a new sound filled the clearing, soft at first, then growing in strength and clarity. Avery had begun to vocalize again, her strange sounds echoing from within the hollow. The bears responded immediately, their warning growls falling silent as they listened to the baby's communication. "It's the child!" Dr. Adams exclaimed. "She's here! The vocalizations are coming from—" Her words were cut short as the ground beneath them began to tremble. At first, Logan thought it was an earthquake, but then he realized the vibration was coming from the tree itself. The ancient oak was shuddering, its massive roots shifting and creaking around them. "What's happening?" Savannah gasped, holding Avery closer as dirt and small roots showered down on them. Outside their hiding place, Marshall's team was backing away from the tree in alarm. "The ground's unstable," someone shouted. "The whole area is shifting." Through the gaps in the roots, Logan could see the clearing transforming before his eyes. The earth was sinking in some places, rising in others, creating a landscape of small hills and depressions that forced the researchers to scatter for stable footing. At the same time, the bears were moving with purpose, herding the humans toward the edge of the clearing like skilled sheepdogs. "This isn't possible, Doctor," Adams was saying, her scientific certainty crumbling as the forest itself seemed to turn against them. Trees don't. Land masses can't. This defies explanation. Marshall had lost his commanding presence, his face pale in the flashlight glow. "Fall back," he ordered his team. "Return to the vehicles, now." As the researchers retreated in disarray, the mother bear turned to the hollow where the Reed family hid. With gentle movement, she cleared away branches and undergrowth from the entrance, creating a path for them to emerge. Logan helped Savannah out first, then handed Avery to her before climbing out himself. The clearing was transformed. The ground reshaped into a series of protective berms and hollows, with the ancient oak now standing on a small rise at its center. The bears had formed a loose circle around the family, their massive bodies silhouetted against the night sky. In the distance, they could hear Marshall's team crashing through the forest in retreat, their voices fading with each passing moment. "What just happened?" Logan whispered, looking around in disbelief. Avery made a soft, contented sound in Savannah's arms, reaching toward the mother bear with complete trust. The massive animal approached slowly, her dark eyes holding an intelligence that could no longer be denied.